My name is Alina Hayes. I'm 34 years old. I live in Portland, Oregon. Not downtown, not the cute, trendy part, but just far enough out where the city sounds fade and you can hear yourself think. At least, I try to. I'm a UX designer, freelance, which in my family apparently means unemployed with Wi-Fi. I work with startups, mostly in health tech, and I've built platforms that have reached tens of thousands of users. But try explaining that to a room full of relatives who think a real job comes with a cubicle and a clock to punch. I'm not married. I don't have kids. And if you ask my Aunt Marlene, I've chosen a life of selfish independence, whatever that means. But I've always been the quiet one, the observer, the one who smiled politely, offered to help in the kitchen, asked about everyone's kids and promotions, and rarely got asked about mine. I learned early that in my family, attention wasn't given. It was earned. And even then, it depended on what box you checked in their mental scorecard. My brother Jake checks all of them. Oldest son, married, 2 kids. Corporate job, the same one since college. Owns a house. Coaches his daughter's soccer team. My mom worships the ground he walks on. I don't say that bitterly. It's just true. I remember once, when we were kids, I got straight A's for the first time. I came home, so proud, waving my report card in the air. My mom glanced at it, smiled, and said, "Good job, sweetie. Jake got A's, too." That pretty much sums up the theme of my childhood. I don't think they ever meant to ignore me. Not really. It was more like I blended in. I was the one who didn't cause problems, didn't ask for much. I handled things quietly, efficiently, invisibly. Even now, when the family gathers, birthdays, barbecues, anniversaries, I still slip into that role. Smiling, nodding, helping, never taking up too much space. It's not that I hate them. I don't. I love my family deeply. That's what makes it all so complicated. Because love shouldn't feel like a performance, like a balance sheet of expectations I'll never quite meet. Last Thanksgiving, we were at my mom's house. All the usual suspects: Aunt Marlene, Uncle Tom, their 3 grown sons and their wives, plus Jake and his family. I brought a bottle of Oregon Pinot and a homemade sweet potato casserole, the one with the marshmallows on top. Nobody touched it. They passed it around like a hot potato, made a few polite noises, and went back for seconds of Aunt Marlene's green bean thing. I just smiled, said nothing, as usual. Then, at dinner, someone asked about work. Not mine, Jake's. He'd just gotten a bonus. My mom practically beamed. "I'm so proud of you," she said, reaching over to squeeze his hand. Then she turned to me and asked, "So, are you still doing that internet thing?" The internet thing. 12 years in design, 4 awards, 2 startups acquired, 1 feature in Wired. But to her, I'm still a teenager playing Sims on dial-up. I laughed, awkwardly, said, "Yeah, still doing the internet thing." No one asked for details. I remember going to the bathroom and just standing there, looking at myself in the mirror, wondering why I still cared so much, why I still hoped that this time someone might notice, might say, "Alina, I saw your work. It's incredible." But they never do, because they never ask. I told myself it didn't matter, that I was above it, that I didn't need their validation. But deep down, I did. I still do. Sometimes I wonder what it would be like to be asked. Not in passing, not out of politeness, but really asked. "Alina, what are you working on lately?" "Alina, are you happy?" Just something, anything. A question that says, "I see you, I care." But that's not how things work in my family. In our world, conversations are about updates, promotions, weddings, baby announcements, material progress, and if you don't have those, you're kind of just background noise. Growing up, I didn't resent Jake. I really didn't. He's my big brother, and he was always good at everything. Charming, responsible, ambitious. He made people feel comfortable. I was more thoughtful, introverted, a bit of a dreamer. I liked sketching designs, organizing my desk by color, building mock websites on our old computer when I was 13. I remember one Christmas, I made everyone hand-coded holiday cards, hours of work, each one designed uniquely. My mom said, "That's nice, honey," and then turned to Jake and said, "Did you see the watch your uncle got you?" I stood there, holding her card, wondering why my effort felt invisible. I told myself I was being sensitive, that it wasn't a big deal. But those little things stack up, don't they? By the time I was in college, I stopped volunteering personal stories. I figured, why bother? They'd just nod, then pivot. I graduated with honors from a top design program. Landed a remote job before graduation. Saved every penny. Lived off cheap groceries and built my own client list from scratch. By 27, I was making more than most of my friends. By 30, I was consulting startups on user flow and product launches. Some days I'd work until 2 a.m., wireframing, testing, presenting. I was so proud of what I built. But when I told my mom I had 3 new contracts, she said, "Wow, must be nice not to have a boss breathing down your neck," and then asked if I'd considered getting something more stable. Stable, as if risk, hustle, and independence weren't admirable unless a man was doing them. I didn't say that, of course. I just nodded and changed the subject to my niece's birthday party. That always made her smile. Jake never noticed. Or maybe he did, but he didn't know how to step into it. He was the golden boy, the hero, the one they leaned on for tech help, tax questions, and backyard fence repairs. I was the one they remembered last. The, "Oh, Alina, you're here!" the filler. Last summer, I hosted a backyard dinner, my attempt to bring everyone together, to show them the world I'd created for myself. String lights, wood-fired pizza, a curated playlist, personalized name cards. I poured everything into it. I even printed small thank you notes for each guest. No one mentioned them. No one asked how long it took. My cousin Sarah said, "This is so cute. You should do party planning on the side." I smiled. Of course I did. When they left, I sat in the yard alone, fairy lights glowing over empty wine glasses and half-eaten slices. My feet ached, my heart more so. That night, I opened my laptop and pulled up an email I hadn't shared with anyone, from Forbes. They were featuring women in design who'd carved their own path. I'd be on the digital cover, with a profile and interview. It was surreal, huge. I stared at it, the cursor blinking beside my drafted reply. No one knew, not even Jake. And somehow, I didn't want to tell them. Not yet. Not when it would just become another thing they didn't understand. Instead, I closed the tab and cried. I cried not because I wasn't proud, but because I didn't know who to share it with. Not truly. They think I have nothing to show for myself. They think I'm floating. Lost. But I've built a life of intention, of design, of quiet victories no one claps for. And maybe that's the hardest part. Not the loneliness, not the misunderstanding, but the ache of being unseen in the one place where you should have been cherished. There's a version of me that exists in their minds. She's vague, half-formed, the single woman with no kids who probably sleeps in, drinks oat milk lattes, and works from her laptop in yoga pants. She doesn't cook real meals. She has too many plants. She watches weird documentaries, and she's still finding herself. That version is easier for them to understand than me. The real me wakes up before 7. The real me journals every morning. The real me built a 6-figure business in a competitive field without investors, mentors, or family connections. The real me is tired. Not from laziness, from effort no one sees. But at every family gathering, I play along. I don't want to seem defensive or self-important. So when someone says, "Still working from home, huh? Must be nice," I just laugh and say, "Yeah, can't complain." When someone jokes, "Alina, you have the most flexible schedule. You should babysit more," I nod and offer, because it's easier to be agreeable than explain what I do for a living and why it's more than just typing on a laptop. I've memorized the rhythms of these gatherings. The women gather in the kitchen, swapping recipes and stories about school plays and pediatricians. The men huddle near the grill, cracking beers and talking about yard work, promotions, new cars. I hover between rooms, floating, smiling, laughing at the right times, refilling drinks, washing dishes before anyone asks. I've become background support, essential but not celebrated. Like Wi-Fi, no one notices until it's gone. Last Christmas, we did the usual Secret Santa. I drew Jake. I got him a limited edition vinyl of his favorite band, one he'd mentioned years ago in passing. I tracked it down from a collector in another state. When he opened it, he said, "Whoa, cool," and passed it to his wife without looking twice. Meanwhile, Sarah got a spa set from Aunt Marlene and squealed like it was pure gold. I felt stupid, overthought it. Again. Then someone, I think it was Uncle Tom, said, "Alina, who got you? Hope you didn't end up with something too boring." I had a candle, no tag, probably re-gifted. I smiled and said I loved it. Lavender was my favorite. It wasn't. That night, after they left, I sat cross-legged on my childhood bed, the one with faded stickers on the headboard and a drawer that never quite closed. I looked around the room. Nothing in it belonged to me anymore, except a few books and some old photos in a drawer. One picture caught my eye. Me at 12, holding up a ribbon from a school art show. Beaming. My hair a mess, paint on my hands, eyes bright with hope. God, I love that girl. She thought the world would open up if she just worked hard enough, if she made enough people proud. I wanted to tell her, "You're enough, even if they never clap. You're worthy, even if they never ask. You're brilliant, even if they never look." But back then, all I wanted was for them to see me, to really see me. And now, even after everything I've built, that ache hasn't gone away. It's just quieter, deeper, like a song I can't turn off. The kind that plays in the background of every family meal, every overlooked accomplishment, every well-meaning but loaded question. You ever think about settling down? Don't you get lonely? Must be nice not to have real stress. They have no idea. No idea what I've carried, what I've built, with my hands, my heart, my whole damn life. But I stayed quiet, because that's what I've always done. Until that night, until the party, until they said something that finally made me snap. It was my mother's birthday, a full-on family affair, matching shirts, balloon arches, a catered buffet from her favorite Italian place. Jake coordinated most of it, of course. He made a big group chat, assigned tasks, delegated the slideshow, and somehow still ended up being praised for doing everything. I designed the invitations, created a custom video montage, paid for half the food, quietly. I didn't mind. Not really. It's just, no one noticed. When we got there, I was the last to arrive. Not late, just not early enough to help set up, apparently. Aunt Marlene greeted me with a hug that felt like an apology and said, "You made it finally!" Like I'd just rolled out of bed. My mom was glowing. I gave her a gift, a hand-bound memory journal I'd spent weeks designing. Inside were prompts, space for photos, even a family tree I'd custom drawn. She smiled and said, "That's so unique," then set it aside to open Jake's, a brand new smartwatch. Everyone oohed and ahed. She put it on immediately. I told myself to let it go, just enjoy the night. But as the evening went on, the usual patterns fell into place. Jake was surrounded by people. Sarah was showing off her pregnancy photos. Cousin Ben was going on about his recent promotion. I stood by the drink table, refilling plastic cups with wine I'd brought. No one asked me about work, or life, or anything, really. Then it happened. Someone, I think it was one of Jake's in-laws, asked aloud, "So, Alina, are you still between jobs?" They weren't being cruel, just careless. But that word, between, sliced through me like ice water. Before I could speak, Aunt Marlene jumped in with a laugh. "She's a creative, one of those digital nomad types." Cue polite chuckles. Then my mother said it. "Well, at least she doesn't have to worry about stress. She has all the free time in the world." I froze. I actually froze. All the air left the room. I could still hear people laughing, clinking glasses, passing around meatballs, but everything felt far away, like I was underwater. Free time? Stress-free? I wanted to scream. Wanted to grab a chair and list every project I'd led. Every night I cried into my keyboard. Every risk I took, every failure I rebuilt myself from. Instead, I just stood there. And for the first time in years, I didn't smile. I looked at her, at the woman who raised me, the woman who taught me to say please, to give more than I took, to be humble and kind and quiet. And I said, clearly, loudly, "I was just on Forbes last month." The room stopped. Forks midair. Heads turned. A few faces blinked in confusion. One of my cousins let out a soft, "Wait, what?" I pulled out my phone, opened the article, held it up. There was my face, headshot glowing, headline bold. "Designing a future from scratch. Alina Hayes on building for humans in a digital world." Silence. No one spoke, not for a full beat. Then Jake, bless him for once, said, "Wow, that's incredible, Al." I nodded. My hands were shaking, not from nerves, from rage. Rage that it took proof to be seen. That my words meant nothing until they were backed by someone else's publication. That I had to announce myself like a stranger crashing a party in her own family. And my mother, she smiled, the same polite, hollow smile she gave the journal. "Well," she said, "I guess the internet thing finally paid off." That was it. No hug, no tears, no, "I'm sorry we didn't know." Just that. And something inside me cracked. I put down my glass, picked up my coat, and for the first time in my life, I left before dessert. I didn't storm out. I didn't slam a door or make a scene. I just left. Quietly. Coat in hand, heels clicking down the driveway. The air was sharp and cold, like the world knew something had snapped inside me. No one followed. No one called my name. I drove home in silence. Didn't turn on music. Didn't cry. Just gripped the steering wheel like it was the only thing holding me to the earth. When I got home, I threw my phone on the bed and stared at the ceiling. Everything was still spinning. There was no explosion, no yelling, just the soft, bitter sting of being disappointed in the exact way you feared, and realizing it still hurt. The messages came in an hour later. Jake. Hey, are you okay? Mom. Sorry if you felt hurt. That wasn't my intention. Aunt Marlene. You shouldn't have walked out like that. It was your mother's birthday. Cousin Sarah. You're in Forbes. That's wild. Why didn't you tell anyone? Why didn't I tell anyone? Because they never ask. Because when I do share, it's met with confusion, or worse, dismissal wrapped in a smile. I didn't reply. Not that night. Instead, I opened the article again. Read the interview like I was seeing myself for the first time. My own words stared back at me. I built this career because I was tired of waiting for permission to be proud of myself. I'd forgotten I said that, but it was true. It was so true. Still, something inside me cracked wider with every message that popped up, because not one of them said, "I'm sorry we were wrong." Not one of them said, "We didn't see you, and we should have." All I got were reactions to how I responded. Not why. As if the problem wasn't the years of silence, but the moment I finally stopped accepting it. That week, I didn't return calls. I didn't show up to Sunday dinner. I didn't even open the family group chat. I buried myself in client work, deadlines, meetings, all the things they called fake stress. But it wasn't fake. It was everything. It was the life I built. Alone, uncelebrated, invisible, but real. 3 days later, Jake showed up at my apartment. I didn't invite him in. We stood in the hallway, him in a button-down and sneakers, me in leggings and an oversized hoodie. He held a grocery bag, some frozen soup, sourdough bread, and a 6-pack of LaCroix. His version of an apology. "Can we talk?" he asked. I leaned against the doorframe. "Talk about what?" He shifted. "I didn't know. You were doing all that stuff. Forbes, design work. That's amazing." I didn't smile. "I've been doing it for years, Jake." "I know. I guess we just don't hear much." I stared at him. "That's because no one ever asks. You all just assume. You think because I'm not married, or posting baby pictures, or working some 9 to 5 that I'm floating through life in pajamas?" He didn't deny it, just nodded, slowly. "I think we all got used to you being okay." "I'm not always okay," I said. My voice broke. "I just learned how to hide it better than most people." Jake looked down. "I'm sorry." I wanted to believe him. I really did. But sorry doesn't fill a decade-long hole. He handed me the bag. "You don't have to forgive everyone. Just don't disappear, okay? We miss you." I didn't answer. He left, and I stood in the hallway for a long time, holding a plastic bag full of soup and silence. The silence after Jake left was heavier than I expected. Not dramatic, just heavy. Like an unfinished sentence that hung in the air too long. I made the soup, ate half a bowl. The bread stayed untouched, and then I opened my laptop, not to work, but to write. Not for a client, not for an article, for me. The words poured out faster than I could type. Everything I'd swallowed over the years, the praise I never got, the birthdays I organized that no one remembered, The holidays where I played photographer and dishwasher while everyone else took credit for how perfect it all was. I wrote for 3 hours straight. When I finally stopped, I had 10 pages of raw, unfiltered truth. Not polished, not marketable, just me. And when I reread it, something in me cracked open, not in pain, in clarity. It was never just about the Forbes article. It was about the years of being told who I was, instead of being asked. The next morning, my mom called, twice. I let it go to voicemail. Her messages were polite, restrained, and emotionally safe, which is how she operates. "Hi, sweetie. Just wanted to check in. I hope you're okay. I know the party was overwhelming. Let's talk soon." Not "I'm sorry." Not "I didn't know you were hurting." Just overwhelming. As if her birthday was somehow the victim here. And maybe that's when it really hit me. I had spent my whole life trying to earn love from people who didn't know how to give it in the way I needed. People who praised achievement but forgot effort. Who listened to whoever spoke loudest and missed the ones who whispered their worth through action. I love my family, I do, but they don't really know me. They know a version of me they built because it was easier to box me in than ask better questions. And part of that's on me too, because I played the role. I stayed quiet. I smiled through the burns. I let them forget me over and over and called it keeping the peace. But peace without voice is just quiet pain. And I wasn't going to live in that anymore, so I did something I never thought I'd do. I wrote an email, not a message, not a text, an email. I sent it to the entire family list. Subject line: before you decide who I am. It wasn't angry. It wasn't an attack. It was honest, intimate, human. I told them about the nights I stayed up doubting myself, about how many times I made myself small so they could feel comfortable, about the accomplishments I never shared because I knew they wouldn't understand, and how the comment, "At least she has all the free time in the world," felt like a slap to everything I'd ever built. I ended it simply: I'm not asking for applause. I'm asking to be seen. I hit send and closed my laptop. Then I went outside, sat on the porch, listened to birds, let the quiet wrap around me, not as a punishment, but as a balm. The responses came in slowly over the next few days, some awkward, some surprising. Ben, my cousin, wrote, "I never realized how invisible we made you feel. I'm sorry." Sarah, shockingly, said, "Your email made me cry. I never thought about how hard it must have been to sit through all those family dinners feeling like a ghost." And then my mom replied, a short message, just 5 words. "I didn't know. I'm sorry." I read it 3 times. I didn't reply right away, because I was still learning how to receive that kind of softness, without folding into it, without letting it erase the years that came before. But I appreciated it more than she'll ever know. After I sent the email, after the replies trickled in, something unexpected happened. Nothing. There were no dramatic phone calls, no interventions, no grand gesture of reconciliation, just space. And maybe that was the gift. For the first time in my life, I wasn't rushing to smooth things over. I wasn't minimizing my pain so others could stay comfortable. I just let it sit. I deleted the family group chat, not out of spite, but self-preservation. Muted notifications, took a break from scrolling through cousins' milestone posts, and carefully filtered happiness. Instead, I started walking every morning. Just me, sneakers, and sunrise. No podcast, no music, just the rhythm of my breath and the sound of birds that didn't care who had the most successful LinkedIn profile. I started journaling again, not for clarity, for comfort. Some mornings, all I wrote was, I am allowed to be whole without being understood. I am allowed to outgrow their version of me. That became my quiet mantra. In therapy, which I had returned to, more seriously this time, I unpacked the invisible ache of being the easy child, the one who didn't cause problems, the one who kept the peace by silencing herself. I cried when I said this sentence out loud. They only saw me when I broke the silence, not when I broke my back trying to hold everything together. My therapist nodded. Let the silence stretch. Then she said, That's grief, Alina. The grief of being overlooked. And God, she was right. Because I had always framed it as disappointment, frustration, resentment. But really, it was grief. For the little girl who brought home art projects and got half-hearted praise. For the teen who aced exams and got compared. For the woman who built her life from scratch and was still called between jobs. I needed to grieve her, honor her, and maybe, finally, release her. So I started doing small things just for me. I printed out the Forbes article, framed it, hung it in my hallway, not for show, but as a quiet reminder. You are allowed to take up space. I booked a solo trip to Santa Fe, stayed in a quiet adobe house, wandered through art galleries, drank wine at noon, and talked to no one unless I felt like it. I started painting again, not for clients or commissions, just for myself. I painted with my fingers, smudged colors on canvas without rules. Let the mess happen, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel invisible. I felt full, not loud, not flashy, just full. One evening, back home, I sat on my balcony watching the sun dip below the trees. I thought about calling my mom, but I didn't, not yet. Not because I was angry, but because I wanted to reach out when it didn't feel like a duty, when I could speak without shrinking. And that, I think, is what healing really is. Not erasing the past, not forcing others to change, but reclaiming the pieces of yourself that you once gave away too easily. The love, the presence, the effort, the voice. It's strange, isn't it? How easy it is to confuse being loved with being seen. I know my family loves me in their own way, but now I'm learning to love myself in mine. A few weeks later, I saw Jake again. He texted me one Saturday morning. Hey, you free for coffee? No pressure. And strangely, I wanted to go. We met at a quiet cafe tucked behind an old bookstore, the kind of place with creaky chairs and mugs that don't match. He already had 2 drinks on the table when I arrived. Black coffee for him, oat milk latte for me. I remembered, he said, gesturing to the cup. From, 2 years ago? I smiled, a real one. That's impressive. We sat there for a while, sipping in silence. He fidgeted with a sugar packet, which I took as a sign of nerves. Jake never fidgeted. Finally, he said, I read the article. Twice. I raised an eyebrow. You're amazing, Al. I always knew you were smart, but I don't think I ever really got how much you've done. I shrugged. I didn't need you to get it all. Just care enough to try. He nodded slowly. Yeah, I didn't, and that's on me. I looked at him, my golden boy brother, still the family favorite, still the loudest voice in the room. But in that moment, he looked softer, more human, less like the myth my mother wrapped in praise. I think I was jealous sometimes, he said suddenly. That threw me. He continued. You were doing something you loved. On your own terms. I've been at the same company for 10 years and still don't know if I even like it. I blinked. Jake, you've got the house, the kids, Yeah, he cut in. And I'm proud of that. But it's not everything. You built a life that didn't need anyone's permission. That's brave. It was the first time he'd ever said something like that, and for a moment, I felt 12 years old again, standing in the kitchen, holding up my perfect report card, hoping someone would notice. This time, someone did. Before we left, he said, "You should come over for dinner sometime. Not a big thing, just us. No performances." That word, performances, landed hard. "Maybe," I said, "but not yet." He nodded. No offense taken. No pressure. Just understanding. It felt like something cracked open. Not all at once. Just a small shift. The start of something gentler. Later that week, my mom texted again. "I miss you. Can we talk soon? I'd like to hear more about your work, really." I stared at the message for a long time. Was it too little? Too late? Or was it the beginning of something real? I didn't know. But I replied anyway. "Not yet, but someday. And when we talk, I want you to ask and listen like I'm someone worth knowing." She wrote back, "You are. Just that." I cried, not because it fixed everything, but because it finally mattered. Healing doesn't always look like a movie moment. Sometimes it's a coffee cup remembered, a text written differently, a moment where you stand still and realize you're no longer performing for love you already deserved. That's what I was learning. That my story wasn't about revenge or proving anyone wrong. It was about finding my own voice in a room that kept talking over me and choosing, finally, to speak. It's strange, isn't it? How a single comment, "She has all the free time in the world," can unravel years of pain and stitch it all back together differently. They called me unemployed. They laughed like it was a joke, a harmless throwaway line at a family party, but it landed like a punch. Because they didn't know what I carried, what I earned, what I sacrificed to build a life that wasn't loud, but was mine. The truth? I've never been unemployed. I've been self-employed, overworked, overlooked. I've been building, quietly, fiercely, and yes, sometimes invisibly. And just because my success didn't look like theirs didn't mean it wasn't real. I wish I could say things changed overnight. That my mother started sending me links to design conferences. That the family now introduces me as our brilliant Alina, the tech wizard. They don't. Not really. But I've stopped needing them to. Because the loudest shift didn't happen around me. It happened within me. Now, when I walk into family gatherings, I don't shrink. I bring the wine I like. I wear what makes me feel powerful. I talk about my projects when someone asks, and if they don't, I talk about them anyway. Not to prove anything, not to win their approval, but because I deserve to take up space in my own story. And that little girl, the one with paint on her hands and a ribbon clutched to her chest, she deserves to be seen. A few months ago, I gave a keynote speech at a national UX summit. Big stage, spotlights, hundreds of people. I spoke about emotional design, about building systems that feel human, even when they're digital. Afterward, a woman in the audience came up to me. She looked to be in her 50s, tears in her eyes. "You reminded me of my daughter," she said. "She's always been the quiet one. I think I've been missing her story." That moment, it meant more than all the family dinners combined. Because sometimes your real family isn't the one you were born into. It's the people who see your truth without needing you to shout it. And still, I'm learning. Learning to forgive the ones who didn't know better. Learning to set boundaries without burning bridges. Learning to take pride in the things no one clapped for. Like choosing rest over overachievement. Like saying no without guilt. Like walking away from a room that only sees you when you break. That too is success. So, if you've ever felt like the extra chair at the table, the placeholder between louder voices and shinier lives, I see you. If you've ever been called lazy, aimless, or lost when you were just carving a different path, I hear you. If your family only noticed your worth when the world did, I understand. And if you're still waiting for someone to say, "I'm proud of you," let me be that voice. I'm proud of you for trying, for holding it in, for holding yourself up, for surviving rooms that never saw the fire inside you, for staying soft when it would have been easier to harden. I used to think healing would feel loud, like a breakthrough, or a speech, or applause. But for me, it feels like waking up one morning, making coffee, opening my laptop, and whispering to myself, "You were never unemployed. You were building something they couldn't see." Until now,